Welcome to the Sleppy Sports Podcast. Now, here's your host, the most unrecognizable name in sports, Jared Sleppy.
Thank you, deep, ominous voice in my head. This, of course, is another episode of the Sleppy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Sleppy. Got another week of Big 12 football games in the books. Going to break down my thoughts on each game individually, as well as get you ready for next week's games and take a look at top 25 rankings and some of the upcoming top 25 matchups. So, in the Big 12, there's a lot of interesting matchups going on this week between two teams. Between mainly I was looking at Iowa State and Baylor. I think that one was really interesting. K-State, Oklahoma State was a really important game. But other than that, I mean, KU and TCU, not so much. Texas and West Virginia, of course, had their bye. And then Oklahoma, Texas Tech. I mean, that game was pretty much a blowout. So I will give my thoughts on every single game. So I usually start with the early games and then move on through the games in an order that I try to keep some sort of order here at the Sleppy Sports Podcast. Let's go ahead and start with the Texas Tech Oklahoma game. And Jet Duffy made his 2019 debut with the Red Raiders. Of course, he threw for 1,100 yards last season in his games in relief, and he was in for Alan Bowman, who has had injury problems throughout his career so far at Texas Tech. So he honestly did not play very good, but the thing is he just doesn't have the talent around him to really do much, and that's one of the many issues that I have with this Texas Tech team, and another reason why I think Texas Tech fans need to chill on head coach Matt Wells, who a lot of people, I saw a ton of Texas Tech fans just wailing on Matt Wells, calling him a bum, calling him nothing more than a high school coach, and it's just like, you guys need to chill and relax and be patient with this new head coach and this new system, because let's face it, Texas Tech football has not been good in nearly a decade, since Michael Crabtree caught that game-winning touchdown against Texas, when Graham Harrell was your quarterback. You guys had Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest talents that we've seen in the past, I mean, who knows how long, and you guys went 6-6. I mean, it's an absolute joke of a program right now, and you expect him to turn it around just like that? Like, no, calm down. It's going to take time. And honestly, a lot of people are saying, oh, Cliff Kingsbury was way better at being a head. I completely disagree. Say what you want about Matt Wells. Cliff Kingsbury, not that good of a head coach. First off, you just take a look at his stint at Texas Tech. Sure, he had a good offense. Yeah, whoop-de-doo. But saying he's good enough to immediately go to the NFL? No way. That's ridiculous. And you see how he's doing now. He's 0-2-1, and his team's terrible. And he's got one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, Heisman Trophy winner Kyler Murray, who went almost undefeated with Oklahoma on an actually good football team. So if you're a Texas Tech fan listening to this, and I know I do have listeners in Texas, calm down, be patient. It'll come. You just gotta be patient. Jet Duffy went 11 for 20 with 120 yards, no touchdowns and no picks, a QBR of just 12.3. And those of you who are unaware, the QBR it's the quarterback rating, goes from a scale of 1 to 100, assessing how the quarterback did based on that scale. So 12.3, not very good. As for the skill position players, still trying to figure out what is going on with the running backs in Texas Tech. Armand Shine seems to be the guy they go to in goal-to-go situations. He had himself another touchdown, 5 carries for just 18 yards. And then it was SaRodorick Thompson, I hope I got that name pronounced correctly. 13 carries, 96 yards, but really the Texas Tech running game has just not really been a factor ever. So take that with a grain of salt. I mean, they were down early in this game, so they had to throw the ball a lot. But honestly, that Oklahoma defense, not too bad. And mainly in the second half. First half, they allowed some big plays. And, of course, they allowed a total of 16 points in this game. They lost this game, Oklahoma won this game, 55-16. 10 of those points came in the second quarter. 6 came in the third with 2 field goals, which was kind of a interesting decision there to kick a field goal when they were down by 30. And Matt Wells addressed this in the post-game conference. I'll play a little clip here in just a little bit. But overall, this was a bit of a tough game for Texas Tech. I mean, you're coming off a loss to Arizona, which honestly I don't think how anyone can expect to win that game. New head coach, dinged up quarterback. I mean, you're not going to win that game. And then you're playing Oklahoma. I mean, it's like if you're a Texas Tech fan, again, you have a really tough schedule there. Like, you need to calm down. I don't think there was any way they could be 3-1 at this point. And honestly, I think it's impressive that they're not 1-3 or 0-4 right now. And also for the receivers, I mean, they only had 2 receivers that had more than just 1 catch. That was Dalton Rigdon and Sir Roderick Thompson, the running back. So overall, this is just a rough game. As for the Oklahoma defense, a lot of improvements there. But I mean, Texas Tech, y'all need to chill. I'll go ahead and here's a little clip of Matt Wells during the post game.
Well, coming off that weekend, obviously not the result that I or any of the players or coaches wanted. But Oklahoma is a good team, really good team, good coaches, and they played extremely well. We didn't play as well as we would have liked. What it causes you to do is you start to look internal, and you start looking at what you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're doing it with, the messaging, how you're messaging, causes you to do everything, and we certainly are doing that. You know, and when I say moving forward, I mean you got an Oklahoma State team that's extremely talented coming in this weekend here at home. It's a chance for us to be in front of our home crowd and play in Jones Stadium, and we all know, that what that means to us and what we want to do at home, and we have to protect our home field, and we understand that that'll be a challenge, but I can't wait to watch our guys do it, and I mean that because we're all in this thing together, and I'm leading it, and, moving forward, Jet Duffy will be our quarterback moving forward, and we got to play good around him. The guys going around him got to play better. We got to play better. We got to coach better. We got to put Jet in the right positions from an individual standpoint that give us the best chance to win. This team does not revolve around one position. We all know that. We got to play better on defense.
Completely agree with what Coach said there. I mean, there's only so much that Jet Duffy can do with the situation he's in. I mean, you got to give credit, though. I mean, he's a great talent, and it's just so difficult to give him a lot of success when the defense is not playing that good. And in my opinion, it's the worst defense in the Big 12. And then, of course, the Red Raiders don't have a whole lot of weapons to work with. So Jet Duffy can only do so much. He is their quarterback, and I expect him to be fine moving forward. All right, as for Oklahoma, I mean, what can you say? I mean, this team is by far the best in the conference. I mean, it's not close. I mean, you just take a look at their skill position players. I mean, by far the most talented, have the best quarterback. Defense is not the best in the Big 12, but they can get by with that, with just how dynamic their offense is. It's a whole Kansas City Chiefs thing, in my opinion. It's very similar. You take a look at the upside of that offense. You don't have to have a great defense. You can win games with just your offense. But when you're facing teams that are contending for the national championship, like Alabama, LSU, you might not have that luxury. And I think they found that out pretty well last year. And that was why they fired their defensive coordinator after the Texas game. That was just an embarrassing showing for that Oklahoma defense in the Red River rivalry, which will actually take place next week. I'm very much looking forward to that game. But, OU, Texas, both with prolific offenses. The only difference is that even though Texas' offense isn't as good, their defense is so much better, and I think that's what's going to make that game a lot of fun. And it's not this weekend. It's actually next weekend. But getting back to how OU played in this game, I mean, first of all, that run game, I mean, they have Trace Sermon, 7 carries, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is their backup. He is their backup running back. I mean, it's insane. You can put him in almost any offense in the country, and he would easily be their number one. It's unreal. And then Kennedy Brooks, he leaves this game. He goes just 8 for 29. He is their starting running back, but He leaves this game after that interception by Jalen Hurts. He tried to make a play and a pretty dirty hit by one of the Texas Tech players on the defensive side that got him out of the game, a lower leg injury, and they're saying that he might be good to go on Saturday, which I think is darn impressive. The Oklahoma Sooners play the Kansas Jayhawks coming up this weekend. But also Jalen Hurts, he was on the ground, and he showed that it's not only just his arm that makes him a Heisman-type candidate. 9 carries for 70 yards and a touchdown, and then, of course, with his arm, another really nice day, 17 for 24, 415 yards, 3 touchdowns. He does have his first pick of the season, but his QBR is still 99.1. Pretty phenomenal. He's just like Kyler Murray in the sense that they don't throw the ball a lot, just because whenever he does throw, it's usually for a pretty significant amount of yardage, and therefore that ball gets moved really quickly. So he has 17.3 yards per per completion, that is. And as for the wide receivers, I mean, CeeDee Lamb is just an absolute rock star. He's easily going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft coming up this spring. 7 for 185 with 3 scores, and none of them were as big of bombs as he's had in the past. His longest was a 26, or excuse me, rather, I take that back. What am I thinking? He had that 71-yard bomb. He averaged 26.4 yards per reception. I was looking at average as his long. That was definitely not the case. And then Charleston Rambo, oh, by the way, he's a pretty good player too. 2 catches, but had 122 yards. So they have the weapons. And then you talk about Jadon Hazelwood as well, 6 catches, 59 yards. So this team is stacked from top to bottom. And honestly, I mean, Jalen Hurts, I'd say, is probably the front runner for the Heisman. And I would say that Lincoln Riley probably agrees.
He made some nice throws. First ball to Rambo was a really nice throw. He's seeing the field pretty well. He's understanding how we want to attack people, and he's been able to process it well early. And he's a little more confident tonight or today. A little bit more, I think, a little bit more steady, and then made a couple of the off-script plays like he has been making too.
I mean, Jalen Hurts is an absolute rock star. Lincoln Riley doesn't really have to talk up his play. I mean, you heard what he said. I mean, he's not a guy who's just gonna this is the best quarterback in the world. Jalen Hurts, when he goes out and he plays, you see it. He's phenomenal. And he will be able to light up Oklahoma next weekend. That'll be a fun one. That will be on ABC. I don't know why that game is. I think it's just because they want to be like, remember that scenario that happened 2 years ago, Baker Mayfield, that thing? Let's see if that happens again. And it's not. Jalen Hurts is much. I wouldn't say it's because Jalen Hurts is a class act. I wouldn't say that, because that would imply that Baker Mayfield is not a class act. I would say Jalen Hurts right now is much more of a classy act than Baker Mayfield was back in college. Because, class, I think, and swagger are so on complete opposite sides of the room, right? Jalen Hurts is classy. He's smooth. But at the same time, he plays with swagger. The dude he just lights you up. It's unbelievable. Baker Mayfield, on the other hand, he has swagger. Doesn't really have class, I would say. He goes out there, he'll hit you in the mouth, and if you hit him in the mouth, he'll hit you right back. Or he'll make sure you'll never do it again. And that's what he did to Kansas back in 2017, and that's what Jalen Hurts is going to do here this upcoming weekend. Very excited to see the Jayhawk football team get absolutely murdered. And speaking of which, I'm going to switch on over to that TCU-Kansas game. 51-14 was the final score in favor of the Horned Frogs, and this game was ugly from the start. Still got some questions with the TCU quarterback situation. It's splitting hairs, but the hairs are all gross and dirty. So they're not hairs that you like. It's not some hair from a Maybelline commercial, right? These hairs have been through I was going to say tornado. That doesn't even work. Somebody is not taking care of their hair. They haven't washed it in a week. They dove into a mud pit, and then some fat guy sat on his head and farted on his... I don't even know where I'm going with that. But in other words, the hair is not good. These hairs are not good hairs that you're splitting. And that is, of course, between Max Duggan and Alex Delton. However, any quarterback can look good against a Kansas secondary. Now, of course, they have good individual players on the Kansas secondary, but as a unit, you got a lot of holes. And as a result, a lot of gaps that can be fulfilled. And as a result, it was a nice day for the quarterbacks, but it wasn't a nice day for Jalen Reagor once again. I don't understand why these quarterbacks cannot just throw the ball up to Jalen Reagor and have him go up and snag it. I mean, he is by far the best receiver on this team. He should be getting at least 6 receptions a game. And the past 3 weeks, he hasn't had more than 3 in a game. He only goes 1 for 15 in this game. He does have a nice punt return for a touchdown. It was a wobbly punt that was just gotten off by the Kansas punter because it was almost blocked. He muffed it. He picked it up, ran up the sideline, and he took it all the way. It was phenomenal. He just showed off his athleticism. Very nice stuff there. But getting back to the quarterbacks, Alex Delton goes 10 for 15, has more yards in this one, has 186, no touchdowns and no interceptions, has 12.4 yards per completion. And as for Max Duggan, 8 for 11, 100 yards with 2 touchdowns. And Mike Collins came in there, and he had a touchdown with zeros on the clock, and I'm sure KU fans were not happy with that. He had 1 carry for 11 yards and a touchdown, had 1 pass. It was a completion for 20 yards. So overall, Mike Collins had the best QBR on the day with a perfect QBR of 100. Max Duggan had a QBR of 99.6, and Alex Delton had a QBR of 91.5. Pretty solid day for TCU quarterbacks. Still don't know who's the guy. At least Gary Patterson doesn't know who's the guy. We all know who's the guy. It should be Max Duggan. I mean, there's no question. And it's not like because Max Duggan is a rock star. I mean, we're talking about Alex Delton here. That's your second option. And that is why you go with Max Duggan in this scenario. As for Darius Anderson, he has a nice day, 18 carries, 115 yards, and a touchdown. I would normally go into my weekly gripe where I say that Darius Anderson should get 20 carries per game, but that offense didn't need him to go for more than 18 carries just because that TCU offense was so dominant, and they didn't have to be on the field for as long because he was so efficient. Had 6.4 yards per carry, and then on top of that, Shewo Olonilua finds the end zone, 9 carries, 39 yards, and then a couple freshmen running backs find the end zone. Foster has 8 carries for 66 yards and a touchdown, and then Darwin Barlow has 13 carries for 51 yards. So a pretty nice day for the TCU offense. On the flip side, Carter Stanley, not a very good day to say the least, as 12 completions out of 29 attempts, has 84 yards, does get a touchdown. It was actually the first touchdown of the day that gave them an early lead, but it was all Horned Frogs from their forward. Man, it was just another really bad day for Carter Stanley. A QBR of 8.1. As for the ground game, with Khalil Herbert just straight up saying deuces, just left the team. I mean, he's not going to be playing for the Jayhawks for the rest of the year, which is pretty incredible, and Les Miles, I'm pretty sure, is not happy about that. So as a result, Velton Gardner steps up in his absence. Has a pretty nice day. 4 carries, 61 yards, and a touchdown, and Puka got the majority of the carries, 8 carries for 12 yards, and he was shut down pretty well. But he did have a reception touchdown, 3 receptions for 33 yards with that score. And Andrew Parchment gets shut down by the TCU DBs. Andrew Parchment goes for just 4 receptions for 10 yards. He's been held in check for 2 consecutive weeks. So overall, not a good game for the Jayhawk football squad, who had high hopes of this being a solid year. But after a heartbreaking loss to West Virginia at home and now a blowout loss at TCU, looks like they are right back to square one, exactly where pretty much everyone except for the national media thought that they would be. I mean, Big 12 media knew it. Local media knew it. And by local media, I mean I would say Kansas media. Excluding Lawrence. because I'm sure there was a lot of people that were just really hyped up about Les Miles being the new head football coach at the University of Kansas. However, they need good players, and that is not the case. Unless you're Bill Snyder and you're the greatest head football coach of all time, you can get away with not having the best players. But still, you got to have some sort of talent to be coached up when there's just nothing there. I mean, there's not a whole lot that Les Miles can do. So as a result, they lose this game 51-14. And like I said, things are not going to get easier for the Jayhawks as they play OU. It is in Lawrence, so I mean, no, there's absolutely no chance. We'll see what happens with the Jayhawks and the Sooners. Should be an absolute blowout there. However, I do think there is a chance that they get a win in conference play. It's not great, but there is a chance. Mainly because, honestly, sure, this team's terrible, but they were terrible last year, and a lot of people forget that they beat TCU last season. So, what's left on the table for the Jayhawks? They got Texas Tech at home, October 26th. Circle that one. You got Kansas State, November 2nd. I mean, at the beginning of the season, you already circled that one. I will continue to circle that one just because in rivalry games like that, records, rankings, all that gets thrown out the window. And then, sure, why not? Baylor at home. I don't see them winning a conference game on the road this season, but I don't think that's really a hot take. Moving on. Iowa State and Baylor. This was a fun one. I had a lot of fun watching this game, and Baylor fans also enjoyed this game mainly because they won a final score of 23-21, but Iowa State almost pulled off a legendary comeback. They were down 20-0 going into the fourth quarter. And then Iowa State put up 21 unanswered points, including a touchdown in the second play of the fourth quarter. And then Baylor got a game-winning field goal. Matt Rhule talked about the total outcome of the game in his post-game press conference.
Well, in the words of Maximus from Gladiator, are you not entertained? What a great football game, and what a great performance by both teams. And I want to make sure I give credit, and deserved credit, to Iowa State. I thought with the way they played in the fourth quarter was amazing, and Brock Purdy was special. And their team is a team of winners and tough guys, and they found a way to come back. They made everything hard. Their defense made everything hard against our offense today, and their offense fought back and took the lead. And even after we scored that last field goal, they still had a chance to go win the football game. And but I thought today was our day, and I'm proud of our guys. And as I said to them in the locker room, I'm so proud of our players, not just because they won, though. I thought the way they played the game, I thought the composure, the class, the toughness, they never cracked. They stayed together. They looked like the class of college football. And I said that at ESPN at the end of the game. I wanted the whole country to see the men of Baylor football. And it wasn't perfect. We have a lot of things to correct. Offensively, there wasn't a lot of consistency. They blitzed us. I don't think there was a down they didn't blitz us in the game. I mean, it was constant duress. And offensively, I thought our defense played three of the best quarters you could expect to see them play. And then, at the end, in the fourth quarter, they found some rhythm. So we obviously have things to improve upon, things to get better at. And one of the biggest things for us is I think it's just figuring out, we're playing a lot of guys right now who we're going to play consistently and make some decisions that way. But for one day, I was really proud of the effort, and it was a great game. I hope the fans had a great time. I hope you guys had a great time seeing a really good college football game.
Yeah, we certainly did have a great time watching this game, and Matt Rhule's Baylor Bears are playing very well. They're now 4-0, and they will take on K-State coming up this weekend. That one should be a lot of fun as well. That game will be at 2:30 on ESPN2. So as for this game, it was a game-winning field goal with 25 seconds left that put Baylor over the top, and Iowa State had a chance to come back and with another opportunity for a score there at the end of the game, but they just weren't able to pull it off. They got out to the 40-yard line, and that was as far as that went. So in this game, Charlie Brewer played very well, the quarterback of the Baylor Bears, went 26 for 45, 307 with 3 touchdowns. it was a very slow start for both teams. Both teams were scoreless in the first quarter, and then Baylor finally got their first score about halfway through the second quarter, and then the offense started to get rolling, and like I said, they were up 20-0. And man, the run game just has not been where a lot of people thought it would be, with John Lovett and JaMychal Hasty, two very talented athletes. In this game, they combined for just 15 carries for 62 yards. It is not a very efficient running day for the Bears. Of course, they weren't on the ground a whole lot. They mainly went to the air, and as a result, Tyquan Thornton took advantage with 11 receptions for 141 yards and a score. Denzel Mims also had another big day with 6 receptions, 106 yards, and 2 scores. Denzel Mims, I tell you what, he is an absolute baller. Containing him is going to be very difficult for the Wildcats secondary this weekend. Should be a lot of fun, and also I'm not going to get ahead of myself and talk about the K-State front line in just a little bit, but that run game, I think, will have an opportunity to bounce back against the Kansas State defense, who had a really tough time shutting down Chuba Hubbard this past Saturday. But the Baylor Bears are now they're still undefeated, rather, and they are just one of 18 remaining college football teams that have 0 in the loss column. They're now 1-0 in Big 12 play. And as for the losers in this game, Iowa State, Brock Purdy also had a pretty solid day. He did have an interception early on in this game. He also goes for 45 attempts with 27 completions, 342 yards, 2 scores, and, of course, that 1 pick. Both had a QBR of right at 53.2. Ground game for Iowa State also struggled, but they didn't really need to go to the ground very much, mainly because the game script was not in the favor of the ground game. It was in favor of the passing game. But Johnny Lang had a very nice day. He found the end zone twice, one over the air, one on the ground. He had 1 catch for the 12-yard reception. That was the one that gave them the lead in the latter portions of the fourth quarter. And he also found the end zone for their first score of the day, 6 carries for 35 yards. With that score is where he finishes. So Deshaunte Jones, another guy who's just kind of there. Tariq Milton looks like he's probably the number 1 wide receiver. He doesn't have a very good day, just 3 catches for 40 yards. But, I mean, that Iowa State offense is really missing a really good player. And Johnny Lang's trying to jump into that spot, but like I said, the run game not really needed that much. And all of a sudden, this team that was considered a dark horse to contend for the Big 12 championship is now 2-2 and 0-1 in Big 12 play. Matt Campbell was not happy with his team after the game, understandably so. Brock Purdy also lost a fumble trying to defend him as he turned the ball over twice. Very difficult sometimes to defend your quarterback when he does not play as good as he should. But regardless, I think Iowa State's going to be fine. I mean, in all honesty, this was a very hard-fought game. Iowa State's defense played pretty good for the most part. It's just they really struggled offensively at the beginning of the game, and as a result, they just weren't able to come out with the win. And continuing on with the Kansas State and Oklahoma State game, as I got plenty to say about this one. Kansas State loses this game, a final score of 26-13. Here's what Coach Kleiman thought about the overall thoughts on the game.
We knew it was going to be a challenge coming in here and trying to slow down something, whether it was a run game, whether it was a throwing game, the quarterback. Our goal was to handle the tempo, not get frustrated if they make a play, and forget about the previous play and go to the next play and hold them to field goals. We thought if we could win in the red zone, we'd have an opportunity. So I was pleased with that. You can forget about yards. I don't care about that. We held them to 26 points, which is a pretty good effort by our defense. Created a few turnovers offensively. We just couldn't get enough going, especially on 1st and 10. That was where we struggled. We just didn't get into a great rhythm on offense in 1st and 10, and that's a credit to their defense. And so we've got to go back to work on Monday. Like I told the guys, we've got a good football team. We've got guys with great resolve. We've got a bunch of great leaders in there that nothing's going to change from us as a coaching staff. We still believe in you. We still trust that we're going to continue to move forward and get better, and they've got to do the same thing and flush this and get ready to go on Monday.
So Coach Kleiman pretty much said it all right there. I mean, in terms of the offense, I mean, you heard him say it. They really struggled early on in each set of downs, And as a result, Skylar Thompson was forced to throw the ball a lot. And, man, just a huge credit to that Oklahoma State defense, who really shut down Kansas State's offense and pretty much every asset. The ground game was there was just nothing there. Very inefficient day for the Wildcats' run game. I mean, you had the longest run was a 20-yard option by Skylar Thompson out to the left side. It was, like I said, it was 20 yards. James Gilbert had an 18-yarder, and then Joshua Youngblood had an 11-yard jet sweep. So just 32 carries for 126 yards. That's a little less than 4 yards per carry with 1 touchdown. And then Skylar Thompson himself. Not a very efficient day for him. 11 for 23 with 118 yards, no scores, no interceptions, a QBR of just 15.3, only 5.1 yards per completion. And I would contribute this to a number of factors. First off, Skylar just did not look good in this game. Number 2, Oklahoma State's cornerbacks are some of the best in the conference. And number 3, K-State just doesn't have enough talent at the wide receiver position to run those great routes against those really good cornerbacks. So, as for Skylar, I think this is kind of an outlier game, right? I think this is a game where he can bounce back from, he can learn from, and he can improve upon. As for the wide receivers, this is a problem. And they really, and I mean really, missed Malik Knowles in this game, who did not play with a foot injury. He was on the injury list on Friday, which is never good when you're added to that injury report that late. And as a result, he did not play in this football game. He did not travel, and it showed. In terms of the receivers, there was 3 receivers that had more than 1 catch. That was Dalton Schoen, who had 3 catches for 23 yards. Phillip Brooks had 3 catches for 15 yards, and Jordan Brown had 2 receptions for 13 yards. He also had a drop. And the most yards by a receiver was Samuel Wheeler. 1 catch for 39 yards. And, I mean, if that doesn't tell you how much we miss Malik Knowles, that Samuel Wheeler from Lenexa, Kansas, was our number 1 wide receiver. I mean, that's just brutal. It was his first and only catch of this 2019 season. Nick Lenners also had a catch for 19 yards. He's not a guy that I like us have go deep. Same with Blaise Gammon. I like that we're incorporating them more in our offense. It's just we had 1 deep throw to Nick Lenners. It was absolutely catchable, but the thing is, Nick Lenners does not have very good hands. And we saw that last year, too. Dropped a wide-open ball against Texas right before the half. Could have cost us the game, maybe, maybe not. I think what cost us that game last year was just not having Skylar Thompson stay in the game the whole time. But regardless, Malik Knowles, we need you, buddy. We need you back. Chris Kleiman talked about his injury after the game.
Well, I don't know how long he'll be out. It's a lower body injury. We learned about it. You know, he probably got it at Mississippi State, tried to fight through it, and we learned on Wednesday. But, you know, we didn't play without Wyatt Hubert and Walt Neal, and we found a way to persevere at Mississippi State. It's the next man up.
I really wish it were as easy as that. But I think the fact of the matter is he's probably your best playmaker on offense, besides maybe James Gilbert. So you miss him, and I think the results pretty much show for themselves. Only 118 yards receiving and 11 completions, or 11 receptions, rather, for this receiving squad. And you have Samuel Wheeler have the most reception yards. I mean, that's just awful. And as for Skylar Thompson, I mean, it's like I was saying, I think he's going to be able to improve upon this game. I'm not really worried. I think he's going to have a nice day against Baylor. That Baylor defense, though, is better than people give them credit for. They shut out Brock Purdy and that Iowa State offense for a full 3 quarters. They did let up there at the fourth quarter, and now I'll kind of attribute that to the fact that the weather conditions were just brutal in that game. I mean, the game time temperature was 95 degrees, which, I mean, of course, it's bad. It doesn't sound that bad. But then you find out that the turf temperature, 145 degrees. And if you watch this game, you will notice very quickly that as soon as players are tackled, they are very quick to try to get up on their feet to try to stay off that turf for as long as possible. And it was about 125 to 130 degrees on those benches, too, while they were in the sun for the majority of the game. And then around the third quarter, the sun started to come down a little bit, but it was only blocking Baylor's bench. So Iowa State's bench was still getting a lot of the sun. So definitely not in favor of the road team there. But that was almost, I mean, that had to have been designed. Regardless, getting back to this game, Baylor's defense will be very thankful if Malik Knowles is not playing this game. And Malik Knowles, you're listening to this, I know you are. We miss you, buddy. Hope you can come back next week. And I do think Skylar Thompson will have a fine day. I mean, I don't think Sammy Wheeler is going to be the number one wide receiver in this Baylor game. I mean, there's just no way. Would like to get some of the backs more involved in the passing game. Harry Trotter and Jordan Brown combined for just 9 carries, and then Jordan Brown with 2 receptions, Harry Trotter just 1 reception. James Gilbert not really involved in the passing game, hasn't really been in this entire season, which is fine. I'm fine with him being our first and second down guy. But regardless, I would like to see those guys get a few more touches, just to kind of make things easier for Skylar Thompson if he gets a lot of pressure, which he faced a lot of pressure today. I mean, he basically almost every play, every single time he stepped back he dropped back to pass, or anytime he was in the pocket, he was always under duress. And this was the first game of the year where it looked like that Kansas State's offensive line did not play too well. And it wasn't just protecting him in the pocket. Run blocking was not good this game either. I mean, it's like I'm saying, the stats show for themselves. So it was the offensive line that was not good. We didn't have the receivers. And as a result, K-State's offense really had no momentum. So, I mean, I think, like I said, this is going to be an outlier game. Skylar Thompson's going to be fine. He's going to bounce back.
He was under duress, so let's look at the film and stuff, and he got hit quite a bit. But he's going to learn and get better. And I know one thing: the kid friggin' battled, and he battled, and he battled, and he always thought we were going to win. And that's what I love about Skylar is he's such a competitor, and we're going to all learn from it.
Yeah, they'll definitely need to learn from it if they want to beat Baylor, who is now 4-0. And I think they will. I'm very much looking forward to this game. I actually have the call on that game. You can listen to that game on Wildcat 91.9, or you can download the app or listen on TuneIn. The TuneIn app, just search Wildcat 91.9, and you'll be able to find the stream there. That game, of course, being at 2:30. If you want to, you can watch the stream or watch the game on ESPN2. Mute the television, tune in, listen to old Jared Sleppy making the calls. All right, moving on to the overall outlook of the Big 12 this week. I mean, overall, I would say it was a pretty good slate of games, and I mean I would say that the TCU KU game disappointed us a little bit, which was not that much of a surprise. Oklahoma Texas Tech knew it was going to be a blowout, but the Oklahoma State Kansas State game and the Iowa State Baylor game really was signs of who is the real deal in the Big 12, and Oklahoma State, in my opinion, is the real deal. Tylan Wallace, Chuba Hubbard, and Spencer Sanders are fantastic football players, and that's, their stats pretty much say it for themselves. I mean, Chuba Hubbard goes for 296 yards in this game. He has a touchdown on the ground. Well, actually, he's not really that involved in the passing game that much in this game, but Tylan Wallace sure is. 8 catches for 145 yards. K-State keeps him out of the end zone, but that's not really saying a whole lot. And Spencer Sanders over the air. Didn't have to make a ton of plays. He was 16 for 25 for 153 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. A couple interceptions, one by Elijah Sullivan, another by Darrell Patterson. K-State's secondary wasn't too bad in this game, honestly. They allowed a lot of yards, but they didn't allow a whole lot of touchdowns, and they didn't allow any touchdowns to their main man, Tylan Wallace. Chuba Hubbard over the air, but they gave up a 3-yard reception to Logan Carter. That was kind of a broken play for the Wildcats secondary. But regardless, I think overall defensively, it was like what Coach Clemens said after the game in his press conference. He doesn't care about yards, and you give up 26 points to this offense at home. Not bad. It's just the offense for the Wildcats didn't have anything to back up. So overall, we move on to Week 6. And in this Week 6, I think there are some more very important games for teams trying to keep their status, including Oklahoma State going on the road at Texas Tech. It's like I was saying earlier, Oklahoma, an easy win against the Jayhawks coming up this weekend. TCU hosts, on the road at Iowa State. Texas taking on West Virginia on the road, and Baylor taking on Kansas State. I think once again, Kansas State is going to be involved in the most important game in the conference, and man, I really hope they can rise to the occasion. I think they will. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the predictions for this week, starting out with that OU-KU game. As of right now, the over-under is 35 in favor of the Sooners, and I tell you what, there is a pretty solid chance that you could you can give the argument for the over. I mean, KU is just really playing bad right now, and it's there were so many expectations for this team. Khalil Herbert is just like, yeah, I'm gone. I can't take this anymore. And honestly, I don't blame him. This team has been brutal all year long, and don't think things are going to change here with an Oklahoma game at home. Final score, I think the final score will be 63-3 in favor of the Sooners. I think it's going to get ugly real quickly. Moving on to Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. Who am I feeling here? I like Oklahoma State in this game, but the line is 9.5 in favor of the Pokes. I think it could be very close to the line. But man, I think I'm gonna give Oklahoma State the over here. Oklahoma State really impressed me last week, on many levels, including their defense. And you go up against a team that doesn't have that many skill position players and a backup quarterback. That results in a pretty solid scenario for this Oklahoma State team. So I think the final score in this one, I'll go ahead and give Oklahoma State a 31-17 win over the Texas Tech Red Raiders on the road. It won't be pretty, but they will get the job done. Moving on to TCU and Iowa State. I think this one should be interesting. This game is in Ames. TCU looked pretty good this weekend against Kansas, and that's not saying a whole lot. Iowa State didn't look too bad against Baylor, mainly in the fourth quarter. They were able to almost come all the way back. Weren't quite able to seal the deal. Having said that, I think this game will be close, and it will be fun to watch. And this game will be on ESPN2 at 11 a.m. And I think Iowa State bounces back with a win. And I'm going to say the final score in this one is, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think it's going to be 16-13 in favor of the Cyclones. And moving on to Texas and West Virginia, this game will be at 2:30 on ABC. Apologies for the little bump there on the mic, but moving on to that game, I think this one probably won't be too close. West Virginia does come into this game 3-1, but I don't think this team is as good as the record indicates. Give me Texas with a final score of 45-24. Baylor and Kansas State, this game being played, of course, at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. As of right now, Kansas is the 2-point favorite. By the way, Iowa State is a 3.5-point favorite. Texas, 11.5-point favorite. So Kansas State is a 2-point favorite in this game. I'm going to go ahead and say give me the over, but not by a whole lot. I think this game is going to be close. It's going to be a hard-fought game. I think K-State wins this one at home with a final score of 27-24. And that will give Baylor their first loss of the regular season. Moving on to my predictions of this weekend's top 25 games. Starting out with the game on Friday between the UCF Golden Knights and the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, this one's not going to be quite as fun as the one we saw a couple years ago. And as a result, UCF coming off a loss against Pitt. Yikes, that's just a bad loss. And then Pitt last week, or actually that was when 2 weeks ago was Pitt. Pitt last week almost lost to some podunk team. So, as a result, I think Cincinnati wins this game. And UCF is a 4.5-point favorite, and I'm really surprised by that. This game being played at Nippert in Cincinnati, Ohio. So, yeah, give me the Bearcats in this one. Getting to the Saturday games, going to quickly go over some of the games I think that are going to be blowouts. I think this Utah State LSU game is going to be probably the biggest blowout of the day, possibly. LSU, Utah State's not a bad team. It's just LSU, I think, is just absolutely phenomenal. Joe Burrow, absolutely a Heisman candidate, has 17 touchdowns with 1,500 yards already. Fantastic player. But yeah, give me LSU big. 26 is the over-under. Give me the over. Kent State, Wisconsin, huge win for the Badgers, 37-point favorites. Sure, give me the over. Jack Cohn has another big day. Purdue and Penn State. Purdue possibly playing without their starting quarterback. So, yeah, that's definitely going to put a damper on things. And I predicted Penn State to lose to Maryland, and they made me pay. That game being, of course, on last Friday. And, yeah, let's go Penn State by a pretty significant margin. 27 is the line. I'll say the over. Yeah, I'll take the over. Why not? Iowa and Michigan, 11 o'clock. That game being played at the Big House in Ann Arbor. I already picked this game. I picked this game before the show started, my mistake. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun, and I think Nate Stanley's going to have a really big day. Man, I would like to personally apologize to Daniel Jones, not the Daniel Jones, but my good friend Daniel Jones. He is a big Ohio State fan, and as you may or may not know, I picked Michigan to go to the college football playoff this year, and he thought that was absolutely ridiculous. I said, no, Jim Harbaugh's job is on the line. Michigan has the talent. Watch them. And then, of course, Michigan gets absolutely buried last weekend against Wisconsin. That was. I don't like Michigan, but I've pretty much hated Michigan my whole life because my dad's an Ohio State fan. Man, I guess you know what? Sure, I'll stick with my preseason pick. I'll stick with Michigan. Why not? Ring it up. I'm picking Michigan to win this football game. And you know what? Give me the over. Michigan is 5-point favorites. Give me the over. So you know what, Daniel? I retract my apology. Take that. All right, moving on to the Auburn-Florida game. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. Top 10 matchup being played at the Swamp. 3 points is the line in favor of the Tigers. I think I'm still not a huge fan of Bo Nix. I'm not bought in on the Bo Nix hype. He's playing pretty well right now, but does not have nearly the numbers that Joe Burrow has or any of the other Heisman-type quarterbacks. He only has 7 touchdowns. Doesn't even have 1,000 yards yet. So, man, it's a battle between two pretty overrated quarterbacks. I don't think Felipe Franks is that good. But then again, I think there are a lot of people who don't think that Felipe Franks is that good. So this is going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be low scoring. And you know what? I think home field advantage is going to be able to get Florida the win. Give me the final score of 13-7 in favor of the Gators. By the way, streaming on Facebook right now. Shout out to George Loxerkamp, the Red Lobster from the Ceres Valley Saber Dogs, listening in. Appreciate your viewership, buddy. Always good to see you around. Moving on to the Bowling Green Notre Dame game. K-State played Bowling Green, rolled them over. I think Notre Dame will do the same. 45.5 points is the line. Do we take the over? You know what? Sure. I've been taking all the overs, so yeah, sure. Why not? I'll go ahead and give the over to Notre Dame. They win on NBC, as they always do. Texas and West Virginia, talked about that one already. Georgia, Tennessee, this one's going to be a bloodbath. Tennessee has just been absolute garbage this season. Jake Fromm is going to roll over Tennessee. However, Jake Fromm has kind of underperformed. That's because DeAndre Swift has been so good. They haven't really needed Jake Fromm to throw the ball as much as he's needed to in the past. So, whenever he's under the spotlights, he does shine, and we will see that coming into SEC play. I still think Georgia is going to win the SEC. Give me Georgia big. Michigan State, Ohio State started getting into some of the games that are in prime time. Well, I guess that previous game is at 6, but, I mean, technically 6:30 are the primetime games. This one, I think is going to be a pretty big blowout, and I think it's going to really solidify a lot of people and give them the idea that, man, this Ohio State team can really contend for a national championship. And I think they absolutely could. I would love to see Georgia and Ohio State in the national championship. I think it's an absolute possibility. Give me Ohio State big there on ABC. Tulsa at SMU. SMU has just been steamrolling folks. Tulsa played well against Oklahoma State. They held their own. They almost gave them a pretty solid run for the money. They actually led in the second quarter, but I think SMU gets the win after getting into the top 25. They're 5-0, and I think they will be bowl eligible after this week with a game at home. California and Oregon. California falling back to earth after losing to Arizona State. Very disappointing that they finally realized that they might not be as good as they thought they were. So they went from number 15 to being outside the top 25. I think they will lose again to Oregon. This is a tough game. Justin Herbert, and he's just been fantastic this year, by the way, solidifying his candidacy as a dark horse Heisman candidate. If he continues to rack up wins in the Pac-12, he definitely will have at least a shot at the Heisman. And honestly, this team, if they win out and they win the Pac-12, they might be able to sneak in the college football playoffs. So keep an eye out on the Ducks. I think they win that game. Washington and Stanford. Washington, I guess, still has a chance to make it to the college football playoff. I'm still not buying in on the Jacob Eason hype, of course, transferring from Auburn to go to the Huskies. He's playing pretty well. I'm not quite as bought in as him just being a winning quarterback. I think they do win this game at Stanford. It's because Stanford has just been brutal this year. I think they fall to 2-4, and things are not looking good for the Cardinal making a bowl game. And then finally, Boise State taking on UNLV on the road. I think this is a blowout. Boise State goes on the road and wins at Vegas. Hank Bachmeier having a pretty solid season, quarterback for the Broncos. C.T. Thomas, a fantastic stud wide receiver for them as well. So that's going to do it for the Week 5, Week 6 college football recap / preview here on the Sleppy Sports Podcast. This has been a very fun episode just because I kind of get to do it live. I haven't done it in a long time. Once again, if you aren't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, you should go ahead and do that right now. Jared Sleppy. You can listen to all this live, including getting all of the interviews that are lined up. You can continue to listen to these on demand on SoundCloud or wherever you listen to them, or on Facebook. You can watch my live stream, see my not-so-beautiful face. All right, so from the most unrecognizable name in sports, this is Jared Sleppy signing off. We will see you on a Thursday or Friday. We'll see. Ta-ta.
I'll be just saying goodnight. I hate to go and leave this pretty sight.